do at that particular moment with a lot of people watching, and that kind of pressure that not many people understand is on you. Every second has to be in the moment. You don't have time for the regrets of the past or the fear of the future. You are there. It's right now. It's when I move my head like this, when I do this, when somebody looks, you know, it's there. It's when the music is going like that, and you go. You know, you just go there.
I see him so into the moment and so into what's going on, so into that communication thing with his fans, and just that's where I see Michael Jackson alive and happy.
In 1984, Michael and his brothers signed a deal with Pepsi as sponsors of their first tour together for 3 years. But while filming a commercial for the drinks company, Michael's hair caught fire and he was rushed to hospital with burns to his scalp. Though he returned to tour with his brothers, from that point, tragedy and controversy would never be far behind. 1987 saw the release of Bad, Jackson's final collaboration with Quincy Jones. A July tour of the UK resulted in 5 nights sold out at Wembley as fans flocked to see pop's most unlikely bad boy. The album formed a quarter of all record sales in Britain during its first week of release, reaching a total of 20 million at the time, but its critical reception did not match that of Thriller.
By the third record, that he had a studio alongside the room that Quincy was working in, and he was putting his own ideas on tape. And then his, what do I want to say, his confidence in his ideas was expanding incredibly. And his need, his desire to put them out and have them heard.
If Jackson's musical ideas were rapidly expanding, so were his plans for increasingly elaborate and expensive live shows.
And, you know, we created the biggest tour ever that will probably never, ever be surpassed, and that all came from Michael's vision.
He sees the entire thing. He knows exactly what he wants and exactly what he wants to do, and that's really expensive. It's up to his managers and his handlers to try to figure out how do we make this work financially, and the truth is that, you know, on Dangerous, it didn't work financially. He wanted it to be so perfect for his fans, and he wanted it just so that he was going to have to write a big check for it, and he did.
Big didn't mean anything. Bigger meant something, but biggest became, you know, the synonym around the office.
Michael had this idea to end Dangerous that he wanted to fly off the stage with a rocket strapped to his back, and we all looked at each other and just went, what? It worked. Somehow he pulled it off, and it was the most amazing ending to a show I have ever seen.
Jackson would never again reach such heights of popularity as tabloid stories about his private life began to proliferate.
I don't know any longer what the truth is about Michael Jackson and what's purely fictitious.
By the 1990s, Michael Jackson had reached the peak of his fame, but increasingly, his personal life would take centre stage.
We talk about brand identities now in the record industry, and people say, you know, you've got to build a brand. Well, you know what? Michael Jackson was the first of those brands. Wherever you went on Earth, everybody knew that brand. They could sing a song, or they saw the moonwalk, or they knew what he looked like, or that, they knew he was strange. They knew something. He was the greatest brand ever.
Part of that brand had always been Jackson's particular style of showmanship, including his choice of pets.
Of course, you have swans, and you have doves, and you have the fish, and you have the snakes, and you have the llamas, and you have the giraffes, and you have cougars, tigers. And we had Bubbles. Michael would always say, "Bubbles, go to bed." And he would go in and he'd get his pajamas, he'd put his pajamas on, and after he puts his pajamas on, he'd go brush his teeth. Then after that, he goes, "Bubbles," I said, which he hated to do, go to bed. "Bubbles," I said, "go to bed." And Bubbles was like, "Woof." The trainers always had a problem with Bubbles because they came over one day and said, "This monkey is wild. He can kill you. He can slap you and knock you out," which he could, of course. He had so much power behind his slap. However, Bubbles had this power, but it was very strange because we never knew how he would react. So when my brother Jermaine had his children, they were just infants. And we said, "Oh my, what's Bubbles gonna do, you guys? Don't let him touch it, don't." And he comes over and he sees the baby. And he comes in the room and he goes, "Ah!" And he, like, his face goes, and he sees the baby and he walks over to him and he kisses him on the forehead. And then he takes his finger and starts rubbing his forehead. And then he takes it out of her arms and he does like this. And starts rocking it and starts kissing it. And then he walks out of the room. And Michael goes, "No, no, no. Let him do it. He knows what he's doing."
We went over to Michael's house to play a bass part on one of Michael's tunes. Bubbles was there, cute, dressed up in his little bib overalls. And my daughter, who's 19 now, was there when she was a baby. Nothing like having a 2-year-old baby and having a monkey that's as strong as 6 grown men holding her hand. As a father, to watch that, you just go, "Oh!" The monkey gave something extra to be in the news with. He, that's part of his job, is how to capture the media's attention.
Jackson was proving to be an expert at courting publicity, but not without a price.
With Michael, when he's out there by himself, it's like stopping traffic. It gets really, really tough, really tough. I mean, we all go to the ranch. Him and my kids have water fights, and they throw in balloons with water on you, and they running around having fun. And at the same time, when you step outside of that ranch, you're being watched all the time. The eyes are on you. When something happens and it's out there, some crazy rumor, something, whatever, we find out by the helicopters flying over the house. And the next thing you know, the house is on the news and there's something going on.
Over the years, Jackson has proved irresistible to the media, especially the tabloids. Stories of the plastic surgery, the increasingly pale skin, the ill-fated marriages to Lisa Marie Presley, and later to Debbie Rowe. As well as, of course, the birth of Jackson's children. All have made headlines around the world.
The tabloids light up when Michael Jackson comes through, because you can put out anything as weird as you want it to be, and it sounds fairly plausible because it's Michael Jackson.
There was a great partnership between Michael Jackson and the media. All the stories about Bubbles, about the oxygen chamber, about his attempts to buy the Elephant Man remains were all put out by his people, put out by his PR machine. So these eccentric stories just stoked the fires around the whole mystique. Jackson maintained this mystique all the way through the 80s and through to the mid-90s.